She's like, okay, I can leave you for that.
Cookies, yay!
Hey, cookies at the morning, babe.
Bye.
Bye, loves.
All right, you all. Welcome to Bread with the Sisters. Thank you for joining us. Today we have a very special guest, Miss Faustina. We have Faustina on the channel today because we want to talk to you about marriage. Like, this is a married lady, and she's 22 years old, who's been married for how long?
3 years.
3 years. And so it's a very unique, and it seems almost peculiar to people at such a young age that you're married. So, I mean, first, what was your faith background growing up?
So my mom and dad met at a Catholic college, Christendom, and once they got married, they were really determined to raise us according to all of the teachings of Christ Church. So they were very devout, what you would call faithful, practicing Catholics. Right?
And what does that look like?
So that was just, we went to Mass as often as we could, always every Sunday. We went to confession every other week pretty much. We all learned the commandments. We all learned all the sacraments, moral theology.
What was important to your parents while raising you?
That we all become close to Christ, and that we all practice our faith because we wanted to and because we knew it was the right thing and not because they said to. And I think they did a really good job of that. So far. So I still have siblings at home. So, we'll see what happens with them. But you could tell they all love Christ. We all love Christ, and we're not perfect, but we all try to love Christ for his own sake.
And your parents reinforced this by making you know the sacraments, the meaning of it.
Mm-hmm.
And what are those other things?
The Bible, right? Reading the Bible as a family was something we did sometimes, not as often, but we were homeschooled, so one of our classes was religion. So we would study moral theology, or we would study the Bible. We'd study Judaic Christian history.
Wow.
Yeah, very thorough. And my mom's a theology major.
Oh, okay.
So, she got it right.
She's prepping warriors.
Yeah. that
for
was,
the kingdom.
Yes. Yeah, and that was her idea. That was her goal. So I think she succeeded. We all know our faith very well, and if anybody falls away or decides it's not for them, it's not because they didn't have the truth, and because they weren't at least exposed pretty much to everything.
Have you ever wavered in your faith?
No. I would say the closest thing I've ever experienced insofar as wavering goes would be after I had my first daughter, Evelyn, and I was really struggling with some birth trauma, and the church's teaching on being open to life. It was just such a traumatic experience. I couldn't understand why. I knew there was a reason. I knew that I didn't know the reason, and that even if I did, I couldn't necessarily accept the reason just because I was emotionally not in a good place. But I was having a hard time accepting the church's teaching on being open to life, even though I knew intellectually this is a good thing, and God would not ask us this of us if we're not a good thing, and anything bad that surrounds that experience, it's only because of the fall. It's not like God intended that.
And open to life.
Just being open to having a lot of kids.
Okay.
And putting your own desires on hold, or not even necessarily on hold, but just changing how you live them in the world so that you can fulfill that call that God has for us in marriage, to procreate and to raise up warriors for his kingdom. So.
And at 22 years old, what made you want to get married?
Yeah, so I was almost 18 when I met my husband, Scott.
Wow.
And yeah.
What did your parents say?
He asked out a minor. So my parents, they knew that ever since I was a little girl, I knew that I wanted to get married, and I knew that was my vocation. I've always loved kids, and I've always, it's just such a beautiful state in life.
Oh, and what's the meaning of vocation too? Because we hear that a lot.
Yeah. So I think, so most people, I don't think I think of vocation the way most people do. I think of vocation as whatever God is calling you to in the moment of life you're in. So when you are an 8th grader, your vocation is to be an 8th grader and to succeed in school and to be obedient to your parents and to be a good friend. And when you are in college, it is to be a good college student and to fulfill exactly what he's asking of you in that moment. So I think a vocation is a journey, and it's something that's constantly evolving. But when most people talk about vocation, right, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's generally of the overarching, what does most of that journey look like? Is it mostly to be a priest? Is it mostly to be a religious? Is it mostly to be a single person, maybe a lay celibate? Or is it to be married? So I knew in that sense that my vocation was to marriage.
And if you say that, vocation is whatever God is calling you to in that moment, how does one discern it? Like, even for yourself, you're a musician, and Faustina's a wonderful singer. She does beautiful polyphony music. You all should take a look. But and you were in college. Like, I know a bit about your background. You were in college. You're very, very good. A star student, right?
Yeah.
Your professors loved you.
Maybe just an OCD student. I don't know.
But then they all thought, well, why are you getting married?
Yeah.
So how does someone discern if they feel like, well, God has called me here. I have a great voice. I have these talents. Why shouldn't I take this? Why would I give this up for marriage?
Yeah.
What's the value? What's the greater value, I guess?
Yeah, so I guess I didn't see it as an either or. It was, God is calling me to this main vocation of marriage, and if he wants me to do anything else, he's going to fit that in as he needs, because any gift I have, any skill I have, it's for his glory, not mine. So if he wants me to pursue music, he's going to show me how he wants to do that within an appropriate context of marriage, right? So sure, maybe I'm not touring all year round, with different opera companies, but that doesn't mean I'm not still involved in music in some way. It just means I'm not involved in music the way a single person would be involved in music, or someone who's, an empty nester is involved with music.
And how do you know God even called you towards marriage at just 18? How do you even, most 18-year-olds, they're going around, they're wild, they're having fun, and
it's good.
It's good, but the mind isn't oriented in that way. And so then I have another question actually then.
Okay.
So for like the youth of this age, like sex is like prevalent in everything. So while you were dating your husband, how did you know that call that you felt, it wasn't being masked by something else, that it wasn't really your pleasures that was leading you?
Okay, so this is where the advantage of being raised in a really faithful family came in. I was really blessed to never be exposed to a lot of things that a lot of people are. Like, I'm really blessed I've never seen porn. And I know a lot of people at age 12, like their friends just show them stuff and they're exposed, and then it's this whole rabbit hole. So I was just able to enter the relationship with a pure mind. That's not to my credit. It's, it's to my parents and to the environment I was in.
And can you describe that, like, with a pure mind?
Yeah,
because I think even that, like, that's hard to grasp as well.
Okay, so just going and knowing I went to be with this person because I love them, and I want their betterment, I want my betterment. I know they can help me grow. I know I can help them grow because we are complementary. And like even if we were never physically intimate, I would just love to be with this person. Not that physical intimacy isn't good, and it's a beautiful thing, and of course you should embrace it when you're married. But like my husband told me, if you wanted to have a celibate marriage, that would be fine with me, just because I love you and I love being with you. And
did he tell you that before?
When we were dating.
While you were dating?
Yeah, and I just,
wow.
Set me up at me. Right? It's like, that's okay, but that's a really nice thought. So it's just going into it with, like, even if something happened and this person became disabled, and like that was something that would never happen again, that never could happen again, or let's say you're a woman and you have some kind of fertility issue where you can't be intimate because you can't get pregnant because it could kill you. You have to be prepared for scenarios like that. And But if you love the person and you really enjoy their company and you see the goodness of their souls, it's I think that's what purity is, just appreciating the person for who they are and not what they give you. And obviously no one's perfect at that.
But I guess by seeing things in that mindset, do you appreciate him even more?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're not married, you can't necessarily, and I speak from my own experience, like looking back now on who I was when I was dating and the knowledge that I had when I was dating, like you just don't know what you don't know. And then you get married and it's like, yes, there is, you enjoy each other and you're happy together and you're newlyweds and like the world is just perfect and you go on your honeymoon and like there's no challenges, and then you get back and maybe you're pregnant and you're super sick. And like you just want to be alone and miserable in front of the toilet, right? But like your husband's there and he's just there to help you. And even you're in labor and you're disgusting and you're sweaty and he's just there holding your hand. Like, I appreciate you for you. And just seeing that spousal love expressed in so many different ways, not just sexual intimacy. It makes the sexual intimacy better, and it's just pure love.
So how does one prepare in dating for marriage?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. I think looking for ways that you can sacrifice to make your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your fiance happy is a good place to start, and finding out what things for you are negotiables. If you are always the only one giving and the other person is never reciprocating, that's a red flag. But if you are both, even if you're just looking at dating as this, we're using this as a tool to discern whether we're meant for each other, and we're also using it for our own selves to become better men and women for our future spouse, right? Even if it's not you, like the person you're currently dating at the moment. It's how can we use this relationship to discern marriage and also to become better individuals.
Okay, so you mentioned before to be chaste in dating. Can you paint us a picture of what it was like when you were dating, and what does it mean to have, I guess, a chaste dating lifestyle? That's
oh man. Okay, well, I know there's a lot of debate about this. So basically it's being chaste, right, is so the one way I've heard it expressed, and maybe it was Fulton Sheen, it was maybe it was Dr. Popchak, was living out your sexuality in the way that is appropriate to your state in life.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Break it down.
Yes. So, okay. Oh my goodness. That's a big question. So if you were a 12-year-old, you should not be holding a boy's hand. Right? That would be unchaste of you to do so, right? There is no reason for you to be dating at that age. You're too young to get married. I mean, unless it's your brother. Like why would you be doing that? It does not pertain to the sexuality of your state in life. If you are dating, that's totally acceptable. Nothing wrong with, and that is a form of physical intimacy, right? So it's almost like what form of physical and emotional intimacy is appropriate to each state in a relationship. So when I was first getting to know Scott and, we went on our first couple of dates, I didn't necessarily feel comfortable holding his hand because that physical intimacy didn't necessarily reflect the emotional intimacy that we had in our relationship. And I think it's very important that whatever you're doing physically has to reflect what's happening emotionally, because that's what's supposed to happen, right? They say when you engage in the marital act, that you give your whole self to someone, right? And it's not just your body, it's your heart and your soul and your mind. So the physical act is reflecting the emotional and spiritual reality.
And you might be forcing yourself to go further emotionally than you actually plan to do so.
Exactly. Yeah. So once you're dating, right, I would say for us at that point, we felt, well, yes, there is a level of emotional intimacy with us, right? Like we really feel comfortable around each other. We are discerning marriage. Now that we're, officially boyfriend and girlfriend. So like,
how long did it take for you to be official?
Oh boy, I think it took like 3 days. Yeah.
And how did you decide that? Like, we're official, so this is what this means for us to be official?
So we were just on our 3rd date, and like, you can sense it when I know that sounds weird, but like as soon as I first saw Scott, I knew I was going to marry him. And I couldn't tell you why. And it didn't make any sense. It was, I think it was the Holy Spirit just going, that's him. And Scott felt the same thing. And I mean, of course I didn't walk up to him. It was like, it's just, we both kept it hidden, and we're like, what is going on? What is this feeling? I don't understand this. It's not logical. But that sense of, this is where we're going. We are going to eventually get to marriage. That continued with us in our relationship. And I know it's not like that for everybody. But for us, so I just had a sense, like, before we went on our 3rd date, like, I think this would be a good time to make it official, because I can tell we are both really, like, we're in sync spiritually and just with a lot of different things. I think we can take it to the next step. And Scott had the same intuition. So I was going to ask him about it on our 3rd date, and then he brought it up, and he was like,
but how do you judge it? What are the pointers that you're picking out to say, okay, I'm ready to move on to the next page?
Yes, I think it's just as the more you get to know the person, and to you what is important to have in a spouse, it's, learning, okay, they not like you have a checklist, but a little bit like you have a checklist, right? Like, for me, it was like, okay, well, first and foremost, I really want to marry Catholic. That's important to me because my heart belongs to Christ. And if my heart is in the hands of Christ, how can a person whose heart is not also in the hands of Christ, like, how can that work? How can our hearts be together? So it was really important to me that I dated and married a Catholic. So it was like, okay, so I got that little check right off, and then, okay, does he really accept all the teachings of the church? Like, that was important to me too, because I didn't want to, in 3 years down the road, be arguing with my husband about why we shouldn't be using birth control. Because I knew that would just put a huge strain on us. Anything like that. There were
so
big.
Faith had to be to be the same. Yes. So
once we met that,
and the intrinsic values that go along with the faith.
Exactly.
So it can't be like, okay, this is what I believe, but my actions say this. Yes.
The faith has to be there. The actions have to be there. And for me, the heart. I didn't want him to just be practicing the faith because, it's what his parents taught him to do. And I guess it's the right thing I should do so that I don't go to hell. Like, I wanted a man who is really in love with Christ and who I saw loved Christ more than he loved me. And the more I got to know Scott, I saw that was true. He reminded me of my dad in the sense that, like, I know my dad isn't perfect, no one's perfect, but he has a really genuine love for Christ. And I saw that in my husband or my now husband. And so that was another so I think it's just knowing, like, what the foundations for a good relationship are. And once you've seen that those are present or not present, you can go from there.
But I think you hit on a good mark too, because everything you said, all your 3 things, God's at the center. God's at the center. Yeah. And I think that should always be the overarching theme for anything.
Yes.
in your dating life or in your marriage, Fulton Sheen has that book, 3 to Get Married, which you recommended it to me. and he always talks about that. God has to be in the center.
Yeah.
Why?
God's the center of the universe. He has to be the center of everything, but especially marriage.
Yes.
And I mean,
because what's the meaning of marriage?
Yeah, the meaning of marriage. I mean, how
it's
would you describe it?
It's all for the glory of his kingdom. Yes. If it's not bearing fruit for him, it's not about us. It's not about self-seeking pleasure and how I can indulge in you or you can indulge in me.
I think it's mostly just like doing everything for God's glory and remembering that everything he gave us is for his glory, and it is good when it is ordered.
And when it is ordered, yes.
When it is used for his glory.
Because anything not glorifying God is disordered. And I think it's just simple as that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So everything in your work, is it glorifying God? In this relationship that you're dating, how are you guys glorifying God?
Exactly.
Are you indulging? Are you doing very intimate touchings that are making, how does this glorify God?
Exactly. No, and I think when you come to the relationship with that perspective of like, for our state in life right now, whether we're dating or we're in marriage or we're engaged or just getting to know each other, are our physical actions, are they for the glory of God and for the spiritual edification of the other, or are they just for our own pleasure? And I think that's a pretty good guide, honestly.
Yeah.
Not that pleasure's not a good thing, and that's a mistake a lot of people make. Like, oh no, like pleasure's just this evil thing that we have to run with, and like poke into a corner with a stick, and that's not true. God ties pleasure to all the good things in life. Like it is pleasurable to look at a flower. It is pleasurable to eat chocolate cake. Nobody eats chocolate cake to be healthy. But if somebody told you, it's a mortal sin to eat a piece of chocolate cake because it's pleasurable, you'd look at them like they were crazy. We're supposed to procreate, but we're not supposed to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like that, no, that's not the right way to look at it either. But if you were only pursuing it for that end in itself, you're not pursuing it for the glory of God, and then allowing all of his gifts to envelop you while you're pursuing his glory, then something's off.
But I think, maybe people get like, okay, what do I do? How do I make this for the glory of God? How do I date for the glory of God? And it doesn't have to be so big and like grand. It just means, how do I please him in this moment? What is most pleasing to him?
Yes.
Is me being intimately close with this man going to be most pleasing to God, who I'm not married to? I don't think so. And you can go back to, okay, what does God want? He always wants the best for us, and he tells us how he wants the best for us. His truths are laid apparent for us.
Yes.
It's just a matter of if we're going to abide in it.
Yeah. No, and I think that's always reflected in biology. And that's just like the most basic level, right? But it's a good level to start with. If you're really wondering like, well, why is it a good idea to be chaste before marriage? And so in the movies, right, it's portrayed to us that sex just comes naturally, and you have these one night stands, and they're great, and it's fantastic. It's people's first time. They know exactly what they're doing, and their performance is great, right? And then, but when you get down to the nitty gritty biological aspect of it, that's just not the case. Right? Like, it's two people learning how to do something together. I don't know if you've ever tried to play ping pong with your siblings, but it's hard. That's just like one, right? So it is a very complex thing, and there's a learning curve, and it takes time. And if you start engaging with someone on in that activity for the first time, you have no experience, like, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be awkward. And it's not going to be what you see in the movie. But if you're with a person that you're going to be with the rest of your life, that's okay, because you have the rest of your life to figure it out, and you love them for themselves so much. You're just like, you don't even care like how well it went, because you're just so happy that you finally get to experience that together, and that you have the whole, like, you've had a little taste of it, and you have the whole rest of your life to journey, to have a sexual journey with. And that's a beautiful thing, and that's what God intended. That was, the first sacrament that was laid down was marriage. And it is a good thing. But if you're, especially women, because it is hard for us on a biological level, it's so much harder, and it's so psychological, and
especially for women who are saying like they can go around and sleep around with anyone. Okay, how does that not add up? Yeah.
So one thing is, like, you do have to learn each other's bodies, because everybody's body is so drastically different. So in Hollywood, especially women, right? Hollywood just portrays it like every woman is the same. Every woman should have an easy time. So men, when they go into these one night stands, right, they're expecting, oh yeah, she should perform like this, and that doesn't happen. And she should react like this, and that doesn't happen. And it's not going to, the way you see it in movies. And so it's going to be a major letdown for the man. He's like, well, there's just something wrong with this girl. Like, I just have to go out and find, like, the girl who can perform best, and, like, I guess, like, she'll be my wife. So what he ends up with is, like, the most experienced woman on the block. Right? And And for the woman, it's just like, well, this is how Hollywood says like real women are supposed to be. Like, I don't add up. I'm not living up to the standard. Like, so when I meet the man who's going to be my husband, I'm going to be nervous of that first time. I'm going to let him down. So if you're really just going into it with like, you're both virgins, you know, which is the ideal, it doesn't happen always, but if you can, like, you both have no expectations, you have nothing to compare your relationship to, and you can go into it like, yeah, we both have no idea what we're doing, but it's gonna be a lot of fun figuring it out together, and it is, and it's beautiful. And you know, you see God's generosity working within that dynamic. Like, okay, how can I listen to you so that we can make this better? And how can I fill your needs in this way? And how can we be patient with each other while we're exploring this beautiful gift God has given us? And that's just not something you can do if you are with a person who isn't committed to. You know, you start to learn them, you start to figure it out, and they're like, you know what, this isn't for me, I'm moving on. And then, you know, your heart is broken. Literally, you've already given your whole self to them, so you have to work that out emotionally with yourself. And then you go and you're starting, you know, maybe with a little bit of knowledge of how sex works with the next person, but again, you're opening yourself up to that heartache, you're opening yourself up to STDs, and you have to start that journey all over again. And I can tell you, that journey is a lot of work. It is. It takes effort. It takes consideration. And that dynamic, that beautiful marital intimacy dynamic, it doesn't work unless you are both focused on the other and you're focused on what they need and how their body works. Like, it is such, when done right and when it is most pleasurable, it's totally selfless. And that's just what's so beautiful. And you see that in the other person, like, wow, they love me so much. Like, they are giving their whole self to me, and all they are thinking about is me. And like, that's how God the Father thinks about me, God the Son, and God the Holy. They just love me so much. Like, they're seeing my goodness, and you kind of experience what it is like to be loved unconditionally. Like, that's the closest I think you can get to understanding in this life what it's like to be loved unconditionally.
Wow. Yeah. That's beautiful, Faustina.
Oh, it is beautiful. It's good. Yeah. It's a blessing.
So tell me, what has been the greatest fruits of marriage by having a chaste dating life? Yeah.
So again, it's that not having, so having been chaste in other prior relationships, it's not having anything to compare our spouse to, which is really nice. Because I do know people that struggle with that. You know, they were unfortunately not chaste before marriage. They pulled their act together. They were chaste with their spouse, and then they get married and they're like, oh, like, this was better with the other person. And that's sad, first of all. That makes your spouse feel bad. And then just like within your own relationship, having self-control, because some people think of marriage like, you know, once you get married, anything goes. Like, you don't have to have any self-control. I'm sorry, most of us end up doing NFP at some point, right? You know, whether it's like, okay, we just had a baby, it's not safe for me to get pregnant for another year. So we need to, you know, control ourselves, and we need to have
NFP is just a way of
natural family planning. So it's working with the woman's cycle to avoid conception without using, you know, any chemicals or barriers or anything like that. And you know, most people, or like, let's say your wife has hyperemesis, right? Which is, you know, she's pregnant and she has a really severe medical condition. She can't keep any liquids down. Nothing, like, she's not going to be in the mood. You know, she's not even physically going to be able to fulfill that for you. And so, you know, you were going to have to be loving enough and have enough self-control to go, okay, like, right now what you just need is for me to hold you and rub your back. Or, you know, like, let's say your husband's really struggling at work and he's just like, honey, I'm really tired. And like, that's just not something that's, you know, like, I'm really into. Like, we just, you know, like, you have to have self-control in marriage. And so I think, so like we were talking about earlier, like, dating is basically training camp for a marriage. It's learning how to have self-control. It's learning how to have good communication. It's learning how to lay out expectations even when you're scared to, because you don't know the other person's emotional response. So if you can be chaste while you're dating and have have physical boundaries that reflect the emotional boundaries that are there, then you can implement those in marriage as well. And it's just going to be so much easier for you to do so.
What are the greatest fruits of marriage?
Children. And I know that sounds super...
Tell me why.
Super hokey. Just because... I don't know. Kids
What
are
do you
great. They're so much fun. And they're hard, but they really challenge you, and they show you aspects of your spouse you never would have gotten to meet if you hadn't had kids. Like, there's nothing cooler. Like, I just remember, Evelyn, our oldest, was just born, and like seeing Scott's, like, his jaw dropped. Like, I've never seen an expression on his face like when he saw Evelyn. It was so beautiful, and he was just so in love with her, and I was like, wow, I didn't know I could love him more. Like, I just do. He's like, wow, what an incredible human being. And then you figure out, how to work together even better, because you're trying to keep this little human from killing themselves, and, just coordinating, and you get better at problem solving, and then they just bring so much joy to your family. And like, of course it's hard. Of course it's hard sometimes. I'd be the first person to tell you it could be really hard, but they're great. And yeah, just having this one, and it's like yet another point where you and your spouse are connected, and you have a common goal together, not just like we are going to help each other grow and become closer to God, but now we have our children. Like, we have a whole nother aspect incorporated into our mission of bringing all things into God's kingdom for his glory.
And how important is children to marriage?
Yeah, so this is a little complicated, right? Because you have couples who are infertile, who are never able to have kids, or for whatever reason don't, and their marriages are still fulfilled, right? But children are the natural end of marriage.
And how is it still fulfilled?
Yeah, so Saint Josemaria has a really great summary, or a really great explanation of this one. He says God loves some couples so much that he gives them children, and he loves other couples even more and doesn't give them children. And so even if you're not married, you're still called to be a mother or a father, right? And that might mean, if you're married, sure, physically I'm called to be a mother, physically my husband is called to be a father, but you can have the nurturing and protective qualities of parents without actually being biological parents, right? So you could have couples who, instead of having their own biological kids, they could adopt or they could foster, which, couples, I mean, God willing, we have a big family. We're going to be so busy with our own kids. We probably wouldn't, go out of our way to adopt or foster, because we are already preoccupied with the gifts God has given us in our own children. So that's where, some couples, right, who aren't able to have their own children can step in and help those other children to have a mother and a father figure. Or, could go. I know a couple who does amazing work. They do a lot of missionary work, a lot of charity work. They lead these fantastic Bible studies, and they do it together as a team, and they work so efficiently as a team. But that's not something they would necessarily be able to do as well if they had children, right? Because children take up a lot of time, they take up a lot of energy. So it's not that God isn't calling people who aren't biological parents to not be parents. He's just asking them to be parents in a different way, and to nurture the world and protect the world and provide for the world in a different sense, I think.
What do you say to people who are now married, and they have made a decision not by infertility but just by choice that they do not want kids?
Yeah.
That they're okay with building each other, and that's it.
Yeah. So I would say, first, I understand. Because when you're on the outside looking in, right, you see like this mom in the grocery store, she's dragging a screaming toddler along, there's a crying baby in the cart, and like she has a ton of groceries, and you're like, wow, that must cost a fortune to feed all those kids. Like from the outside, all we tend to see the hardships, right? But what you don't see are all the joys and all the ways you can grow. And like, you literally, I can't even begin to explain how the joy you feel in seeing your child happy, or in seeing your child born for the first time. I told one of my friends, like, when our oldest Evelyn was born and I saw her for the first time, like I literally felt like I was in heaven. I'd never experienced anything like it. It felt like the beatific vision, like what I the closest thing I could imagine the beatific vision to be like. And you just become enveloped in that really, I think, is possibly the most pure love you can have for a person. A child can't give you anything back. All they can give you are poopy diapers, you know, like, and some laughs, right? But like, you just, for some reason, you just love them so much. And they just bring you so much joy, and you can't even explain it. And you are happy to stay up at night with them. And you know, you're willing to give up, you know, vacations or whatever, just because you love them so much. So, so I would say, like, while I understand it looks hard, and it is definitely hard sometimes, and there are challenges, like, you can't know until you try, right? You can't know the joy of surfing until you've actually stood up on that surfboard. Like, you can view it, and you can observe other people's joy, but you can't actually know what that joy feels like internally until you've experienced.
But what if it's not fear of challenge, but just a simple unwant? They don't feel the need for it.
Right. Well, I would say you don't know what you don't have. And right, easier said than done. But I mean, I can't tell you too, like my own mom never really wanted a lot to you know, but she, you know, she knew it would be a good thing, and
now
she
she has how many? Yeah,
she has 6. She has 6 kids, and she loves us all to death. And you know, I know we bring her a lot of joy, even though, you know, I'm sure we drive her crazy sometimes. And like, it's so beautiful seeing her light up, like seeing my kids now, and her being able to acknowledge the reality, like, wow, they would not be here without me. My kids would not be here without me. And I mean, yeah, there must be, if so many people, you know, religious or a-religious, or if so many people keep having kids, that we are standing on this earth, like, you know, millennia after, you know, the earth was created and man and woman were first created, there must be something to it. You know, there must be more, that even if people aren't seeking spiritual edification through having children, there must be some reason that, you know, people who are atheists have children. Like, why? And people who are atheists sometimes have lots of children. Like, they must gain something from that dynamic. People don't, that it's called the rationality principle. People don't do anything that they assume will put them in a worse position than they are already in, right? Intentionally. And that's like something that's in economics and philosophy, things like that. So they may choose the wrong good. They may perceive something to be a good that's actually not, but they will never intentionally do anything that puts them in a worse position. So there must be some reason that, you know, couples have multiple children. Like, they must gain something from it. So I would say, while I understand your hesitations, don't be dismissive of the many people who have had children before you, like your parents and their parents and all your friends who have kids. There must be some good there that you simply can't understand.
A greater purpose is always at hand.
Yeah, unless you're able to experience it. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your final note to everyone? Just to
final note. Oh boy.
And in regards to marriage and dating, and I guess living a life of virtue, and looking for God in the center of all things.
Yeah, I think as long as you understand, and this has always guided me throughout my discernment, is as long as you understand what your end goal is I spend 80 years on earth, and I spend the rest of eternity somewhere else. Do I want it to be heaven or hell? I want to be in God. I want to be with Jesus. So just okay. Keeping in mind as you are living your life, pursuing relationships. Okay, where do I want to be? Who do I want to be with? And how is this fulfilling that goal? So, and doing that with relationships. What is our what is our end goal in marriage? It is to help each other grow. It's to get us both to heaven. It is to get our children to heaven, right? What is the purpose of dating? Is to help, essentially the same thing. Like it's all about growth.
Yeah.
And the further you progress in your life, and the further you progress with your vocation, whether it's marriage or, religious, or as a lay person, or as a student, or, as a preschooler, like there's just so much we don't know that we don't know. And if we find out those things by pursuing our calling and by listening to the Holy Spirit and keeping in mind that end goal.
Yeah.
If we are trying to grow, if we are trying to get strong enough where we can complete the journey, we're going to learn so much along the way.
And again, always, is it bringing you closer to God or further away from Him?
Exactly.
In each moment, in each decision.
Yeah. And if you ever are having a difficult time making a decision, it's here with God or not with God.
I do want to touch on one thing.
Okay.
Because how did you make the decision while being at university in your school? Can you tell me exactly like the kind of music you were studying?
Yeah. So a vocal performance major. I'm gonna call her a Tresse soprano.
And what it means? Yes.
Yeah. So that's basically. I study. I'm still in school actually. Western art music, right? So going back and studying where did our Western art tradition come from, and it started out with Gregorian chant, and moved through the evolution of music with the Renaissance, the Baroque era, classical era, Romantic. So studying all those different time periods and learning how to sing in bella voce, sing appropriately for all those different time periods.
And you did well in university.
No, I was doing very well. So
so how do you, when we're talking about discerning moment to moment and what's going to be most pleasing to God, how do you decide what to give up, or the choice that you just have to make? You know, because you did take a step back from school, and I'm sure that you wanted that greatly, but something else came along and you had to make a decision.
Yeah. So my husband came along and I just, like I said, I just knew he's the one. And I know, so there's I can't remember who said it. Maybe Father Calloway, I don't know, but a theologian pointed out, like, whenever God asks us to do something, He wants us now. He wants our action. When the three angels appeared to Abraham in the desert, he quickly went and he ran and he got bread and he got water and he quickly made it well, and he served it. Like, God was there and he knew it, and he knew what God was asking him to do, and he wanted to do it right away. So I just that idea of God wants us, and He wants us now. Like, when He is calling us, it is time to go. When Jesus calls the fishermen, they just get off their boat and leave. They don't say goodbye to anybody. They're just there for Jesus. So it was just that idea of, if God is calling me, He probably wants me now. This is probably the time. He usually doesn't give us like an invitation with like 3 years down the road, I want you to blah, 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 blah. He's like,
take action now.
Yeah. He tells you when you're ready for it.
Yeah.
And, so when he introduced Scott into my life, I was like, Lord, I think You want us to go for this. There was no reason not to get married. We knew that, financially we would be okay. Even if, not in necessarily the most ideal situation, we knew like we would be fine there. We knew we could make it work. So, and I just figured, if God gave me this talent and this skill for music, and if He wants to incorporate that into my life, as I do, but ultimately my life is in His hands, that He's going to show me how to do that. And it is just my job to trust. So we got married, and it was amazing because we got married in June. And so I was supposed to, continue classes in August. And, we just decided at the very beginning, like, Lord, if, you're going to send us a baby right away, great. Like, but what's best for us at this point. There's no reason to try to not have one, through natural family planning or anything. So we're just going to be open to your will, even though it would be most convenient for me to be able to finish those 2 semesters of classes before, a baby would come. And for whatever reason, we didn't get pregnant until October, and that put me at having the baby right after I finished my classes. So He knew. Yeah. And it was just like such an amazing testimony. to like, God hears us and he hears our desires. Yes. And he there are things that he does want us to incorporate into our life. So I had the baby. My professors, some of my professors were very disappointed in me because I was doing so well. And you probably know, with the music world, it's like, you either devote your life to music or you're a failure. Yeah. And like, you do nothing else but like, you go home and you study Bach in your closet while you're eating your ramen, and you go and you practice for 6 hours. It's very, all consuming.
Yes.
So for me, it just seemed balanced to me to be like, well, yes, I have this thing that I think God is calling me to marriage and to having a family, and something I've always desired. And I don't think that desire has to be conflicting with the other desires that I have, the desire to do music or to do anything else. It might be incorporated into my life in a way that is not the norm, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being unique and being a special person. We're all called to be, we're all called to live our own lives, and no two lives look the same. And that there is beauty in variety, and goodness, truth, and beauty. So I don't know.
I love that.
Makes any sense.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so one thing that we always do with every guest is, 1, who's your favorite saint and why? And then 2, what book would you recommend for the audience?
Oh man, that's hard. Favorite saint. Who's my favorite? Probably Saint Joseph.
Okay.
Probably Saint Joseph.
Why Saint Joseph?
He's, he's just such a great example of such a unique person. He's called to such a unique vocation. Like, I want you to be the father, but I don't actually want you to be the biological father. And like I want you to be married to Mary, but not in the conventional way. You're going to have a virginal marriage. And he just goes with it. He adapts, and he's scared, and he makes decisions that are the wrong decisions, but are intended well. Okay, I'm going to divorce Mary. Like, I really think this is the best thing, but I'm open to God's will, but I think this is what we have to do. And then God comes and corrects him. He's like, okay, then I'll do what you want me to do. That's just fine too. And he's just the ultimate protector, and he's helped our family in so many ways. We have a strong devotion to him, and yeah, he's one of my favorites for sure.
Wonderful.
But there are many.
And favorite book or book to recommend?
That's hard. That's very hard. Favorite book?
Something that,
like, pertaining to anything in particular, or
I think something that deeply resonated with you along your own faith journey, and that you think it would be an aid to someone else.
I really like The Faith Explained by Father Tresse. Have you read it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great book, and I think it's just, if you don't know anything about the Catholic faith, it's a great place to start, because it just lays everything out.
And it's simplistic.
It's simple. It's not, it doesn't boggle your mind too much. It gives you a lot to think about, but not too much.
Yeah.
And then if you really do know your faith, it reintroduces all these concepts. It puts them in a new light. It's concise. It makes you revisit things that maybe you haven't thought about in a while in your faith journey. So I really like that book, and I love anything by St. Josemaria Escriva.
Okay.
About living your vocation in the world, and sanctifying the world around you as you journey towards Christ. I don't know. The Way is really good. The Forge is really good. Really anything by him.
Okay. Wow. Well, lovely. Thank you, Faustina, for joining us. Thank you all for watching Bread with the Sisters. We hope you enjoyed. If you will like to know a little bit more.
I have
so thank you all for joining us on Bread with the Sisters. Say bye. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll have more coming to you soon. Okay.